Thank you, Mr. Cisneros. Ms. Underwood, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this important hearing, and thank you to our witnesses for being here. I know we all share the same goal of halting veteran suicide crisis and ensuring that our veterans' access to high-quality suicide prevention services is critical to that goal. As a public health nurse, I also know firsthand how important it is to build in robust accountability and quality assessment measures when designing programs that provide these services, which is why I introduced the Veterans Care Quality Transparency Act, which passed the House earlier this year. My bill helps ensure that outside entities that VA partners with for suicide prevention and mental health services are providing effective care. I appreciate the additional guardrails included in the chairman's draft of HR 3495, which I think go a long way towards addressing concerns that some of the accountability metrics in the bill were overly broad. I wanted to clarify at the beginning something that you said, Mr. Secretary, at the beginning of this hearing. You said that there was $18 million set aside by VA for these grant programs. Can you just clarify that number and what specifically you were referring to?
We set aside monies in our budget for new grant programs. However, we need authorization to take those monies and use them for programs that are part of the legislation. We have to have specific legislative authorization, which is what this bill does. It allows us to spend that $18 million on the hub and also on the small and medium providers.
Right. So absent that $18 million, which then I would imagine because you don't have the authorities outlined in this type of a bill, then how much are you spending currently on community-based outreach for veterans who are not connected with the VA?
So we have no authority today, Congresswoman, to spend that $18 million. It is sitting, waiting for authority to spend. So because we have been talking about a public health approach for a number of years, we thought this was the year that we would get authorization passed. And therefore, it is in the budget for this year. But should this bill not pass, we will not have the ability to spend that $18 million.
That's only a part of our $9.5 billion mental health budget. I mean, that is what is out there.
Okay. I'm going to take this offline. That's a little inconsistent with what we had heard previously, which is how our legislation was generated. I mean, the VA has been spending millions to contract with outside groups to reach people doing, and maybe outreach is different than clinical care coordination or clinical service provision, but it's our understanding that there has been outreach to these veterans who are not connected with the VA, which is why we passed this legislation earlier this year to take a look at some of those contracts. So we will be following up with you all separately. My question for Dr. Carroll is, from a clinical perspective, what do you believe defines a successful suicide prevention service?
It has to be individually tailored. We have to look at the individual person, and we want to find the healthy balance of risk and protective factors. Everyone has risk and protective factors, and what a successful outcome is to have a response to that individual, given their situation in life, given the demands that are placed upon them, that works for them in that situation. I think we certainly want to preserve life, but that's not the end. We want to help people thrive in their communities. We want people to live well. Our mission in VA is to use a whole health approach to engage veterans in lifelong health, well-being, and resilience, and that's really the focus of this and everything that we do.
So again, from a clinical perspective, then how would you determine that an organization eligible to receive grant funding from this bill is one that's successful at providing services that reduce veterans' risk of suicide?
Well, the legislation is very clear. In Section 2, it says that we have to see evidence from the group, that we have to verify that they have an established track record of reaching out and helping veterans who are in danger of suicide. So the standards are already written in the legislation.
Okay. Well, again, based on our review, it does seem that that definition of success might be a little inconsistent given an organization that might not have a track record of that type of clinical success, right? It's one thing to be able to do outreach. It's very different to be able to successfully say that you've prevented a suicide.
I mean, the language, I think, is indicative here. It says that the only people who are eligible are those who have demonstrated the ability to provide, coordinate, suicide prevention services, or other services that improve the quality of life of veterans and their families to reduce factors that contribute to suicide. So that's the benchmark that we have to go off based on the legislation as presented.
Okay. We'll be following up with you separately about the money. Thanks for appearing here today, and I yield back.
Mr. Secretary, that language you were quoting, is that